In the spring of 1939, Edward again showed his appetite for meddling in international affairs. In a direct attempt to influence American popular opinion, the exiled Duke made a radio broadcast. His message was world peace, but this could only be peace on Hitler's terms. With England and Germany on a collision course, Edward clung to his improbable formula for appeasement, which he had planned with the Nazis. He chose a symbolic location from which to make the broadcast, the ancient French town of Verdun, scene of one of the fiercest battles of the First World War, where over 500,000 men had died.
I am speaking tonight from Verdun, and as I talk to you from this historic place, I am deeply conscious of the presence of the great company of the day. I speak simply as a soldier of the last war. The supreme importance of averting war will, I feel confident, impel all those in power to renew their endeavors to bring about a peaceful settlement.
Although the broadcast was never heard in Britain, due to pressure from the royal family, in the United States, the Duke's words had enormous impact. Edward remained a law unto himself, ignoring the best interests of his countrymen.
The speech Edward gave at Verdun shows how far he was out of touch with the way in which opinion had developed in Britain after Munich. And indeed, the evidence suggests that it had already begun to swing very heavily against Hitler before Christmas '38. One of the important elements in this being the lengthy discussion of where he was going to strike next. The other being the anti-Jewish pogrom of early November 1938. It shows really that Edward had already lost touch with the way in which opinion was moving among the bulk of the English people.
While Edward urged the politicians to sue for peace, the British people had realized that war was inevitable. Many wondered what would have happened had Edward remained king. But few anticipated that he would betray national interests at a time when his country needed him most.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note, stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
With the outbreak of war, the question of what to do with the ex-king was still unresolved. His brother, George VI, was determined to keep him out of harm's way. Edward was still regarded as a political liability in Britain.
So Major General the Duke of Windsor is taking up his appointment with the General Staff somewhere in France.
Disappointed by his lowly rank, Edward never moved into his military billet, and instead spent his time in the more comfortable and familiar surroundings of the best hotels in Paris. The Duke began socializing again with his old pro-Nazi circle led by Charles Badeau. The Nazi sympathiser found Edward a rich source of information and preyed on his weaknesses. They met almost daily, with Badeau usually picking up the Duke's hotel bills.
I think Edward was generally regarded as a security risk because he used to blab. And he used to drink a lot, and at that time he certainly couldn't be trusted to keep secrets. And in fact, later on, in the early years of the war, he did give things away which he should not have.
There have long been rumors that Edward passed on secrets to the Nazis during his sojourn in Paris. His treachery is proved by a detailed inspection of the German foreign policy documents of the Second World War, which are kept here in Bonn. A seemingly innocuous cable from Germany's ambassador to The Hague, Count Julius von Zech-Berkesrode, reveals how the Nazi hierarchy regarded Edward.
Through personal relationships, I might have the opportunity to establish certain lines leading to the Duke of Windsor. He does not feel entirely satisfied with his position. There seems to be something of a resistance movement forming around Windsor, which at some time, under favorable circumstances, might acquire certain significance.
The fact that he mentions the Duke of Windsor and direct lines to him suggests that he had a source. The source, when you look at the people in the Duke's circle who were traveling backwards and forwards to The Hague, the obvious one is Charles Badeau. I mean, we don't get the report from the German ambassador in Paris. It's the German ambassador in The Hague. Badeau was traveling backwards and forwards. We know that from the diaries of the people around them at the time. He was dining with the Duke of Windsor, picking up the tab at the Ritz Hotel, and clearly he is the most obvious candidate for the source that the German ambassador in The Hague was referring to.
Even though he was a serving officer in wartime, there is little doubt that the Duke was prone to careless talk. But in 1940, he went beyond indiscretion in an incident which proved how dangerous Edward could be to the Allied cause. In January 1940, as Hitler prepared for all-out war, he had three clear options to advance through Western Europe. One option was to launch an attack through the lowlands of Belgium and northern France in a rerun of the German tactics in the First World War. Another possibility was an assault much further south, through the Maginot Line, the heavily defended system of forts along the French-German border. These were the obvious choices. In between lay the dense forests of the Ardennes, which the Allies believed were impenetrable for rapid army movement. Hitler and the German General Staff decided to advance through the Low Countries. The attack was scheduled for January the 17th, and by January the 10th, the armies were on the move. On that day, catastrophe struck for the Germans. A Luftwaffe plane crashed at Mechelen in Belgium, carrying Hitler's complete battle plan. Local resident Alphonse Thies was there when it happened.
It was very cold. There was snow everywhere, 15 degrees beneath zero. There was a little bit fog over the Maas, over the Rhine. They lost their way. He came from Mechelen on the Maas. He turned over the border from Holland. He came back, and between two trees, he broke the two wings of the plane, and then he crashed here in the hedge on the border of the way.
Such was the sensitivity of the documents that the pilot attempted to destroy the papers before he could be arrested.
Then one of the officers tried to burn the papers behind that hedge. The Belgian soldier came from there and arrested him immediately. And then he saw the smoke over the hedge, and he arrested the second with the papers also, and they brought everything to Mechelen on the Maas.